Hey, you're on the Bible Forum. That's Warren Sprouse. This is April 8th, 2018. This is episode 2 in our week's events. We've already gone through about a half hour of what I think are significant news items. We've got some more coming. I told you some months ago about the Air Force colonel who was kicked out, suspended, because he refused to sign a certificate in support of gay marriage. Well, we have Joy in Mudville tonight to report that that decision has been reversed. According to the Christian Post, Colonel Leland Bohannon, citing his Christian faith, refused to sign a certificate of appreciation for the same-sex spouse of a retiring serviceman. First Liberty Institute filed an appeal with the Air Force Review Board's agency after Bohannon was suspended. The Air Force has now reversed its decision and states that Bohannon had the right to exercise his sincerely held religious beliefs and did not unlawfully discriminate when he declined to sign the certificate. End of quote. A little sub-point here. It seems the political flavor of the country matters. I venture to say if Hillary had become president, this would not have occurred. Very strange, isn't it? In the military vein, however, according to USA Today, we have a Navy chaplain who was fired just last month in March of 2018. He was caught on video having sex with a woman outside a New Orleans bar. A chaplain. His name is Lofton Thornton. He's a Navy captain. Stationed with the Marine Force Reserve in Algiers, not across the ocean, but there outside of New Orleans. And authorities reportedly confirmed Thornton was seen in a video having sex with a woman at the Crown and Anchor, a bar in Algiers Point, not far from the Marine Corps facility. The bar's owner told a news outlet that, quote, the incident happened outside the bar. It's out on the street. Marine Reserve spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Ted Wong told USA Today that Thornton, who has been a Navy chaplain since 1992, was fired March 20th for what they call loss of trust and confidence. The case is still under investigation. What's the obvious conclusion? I think you know. I have no idea what these two apps really do, what they're supposed to do, or what they're about. If you have young children in your home, you probably know what they are. One is called Amino, A-M-I-N-O, and the other is called Musical.ly. We're being told by people who have been exposed to these and have a Christian orientation that we need to get them away from our children. I don't know what they are. Maybe you don't. But the odds are your children do. If they have a smartphone, a mobile device, drop what you're doing and go check it. These are called affinity-based apps. Amino and Musically. If you find them, delete them. And then schedule some dedicated time to talk with your children about what they've seen. Apparently, affinity-based apps are like digital octopi with 100,000 legs. The legs are common, interest-specific, front doors that bring children together. With them, kids and teens are able to find a world of friends that like the same things they do. You enjoy stamp collecting, Japanese anime, virtuoso harmonica playing. There are hundreds of thousands of kids out there who do too, and these apps help them find one another with the tap of a finger. And it all sounds harmless enough until you realize the digital, unmoderated world to which these apps lead. One father reported that in just 3 clicks of his 10-year-old daughter's Amino account, he found unmoderated discussions of sexual identity, pansexuality, bulimia, anorexia, and suicide. He said it was like a digital Lord of the Flies. Now, the folks at access.org have written a parent's guide to amino apps. You can find it at breakpoint.org. There's a link, and it's free. Breakpoint is a Christian worldview ministry. Breakpoint.org. We know how that science will tell us that they know just about everything. Science basically can tell you the how of most things. Rarely, when it comes to stuff that's important, do they know why. The question here are the stuff of kids. Why? They want to know. Well, so do scientists. But when it comes to the universe, they're stuck. An article in Dateline, Washington, says scientists hope they might come up with an experiment that could explain the origin of the universe, meaning everything, both matter and energy. But the much-hailed Majorna demonstrator, located in South Dakota at the super-secret Sanford Underground Research Facility, didn't offer a clue as to why anything should exist at all. Scientists believe the key to understanding the existence of matter and energy lies in the theory that an equal amount of antimatter should exist, offset. The trouble, including the recent experiment, has been finding that. Modern physics theory requires it. Without it, nothing should exist. Operative word here, should. Science is still struggling because they will not accept the idea of a God. An image in the San Diamano cross, an image of the San Diamano cross, shows Jesus in glory reigning from his cruciform throne. And it has been soundly rejected by Facebook because of its shocking content. It's a cross, a stylized cross. It's sometimes called an icon cross because in addition to the main figure of Christ, it also contains images of other saints and people related to the incident of Christ's crucifixion. It is supposedly the cross before which Francis of Assisi was praying when God told him to rebuild the church. St. Francis of Assisi, beginnings of the Franciscan order. The Franciscan order, Pope John Paul II asked forgiveness for what the Franciscan order has been doing for the last 500 years. The Franciscans are known as the enforcers. Pope Francis is a Franciscan. And it all has to do with the persecution of non-Christians. The history behind this comes from a French press agency called AFP. The Roman Catholic Inquisition, for which Pope John Paul II sought forgiveness, was a 700-year campaign of persecution of heretics in which hundreds of thousands of people were tortured and killed, all in the name of Jesus. They did not believe what the Roman Catholic Church was teaching. They were heretics, not just unbelievers. They were heretics, and they had to be convinced one way or another, or they die. The Inquisition, from the Latin verb inquirio, means to inquire into. It was initiated by Pope Gregory IX in 1231, when he wrote to French bishops informing them that he intended to repress heresy, witchcraft, alchemy, and deviations such as devil worship. At first, the inquisitors were drawn almost exclusively from the Franciscan and Dominican orders who traveled around seeking out heresy. Later, they acquired the right to summon suspects from their homes to the Inquisition Center. The medieval Inquisition was employed mostly in southern France and northern Italy, although it was very popular in Spain. In 1252, a papal bull by Innocent IV authorized torture as a means of extracting confessions. In 1478, Sixtus IV authorized the Spanish Inquisition. This reached its apogee under the rule of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabel of Castile. Now do you know why people wanted to leave and find a new world? They were motivated. The armies of these king and queen, these leaders, swept across the Iberian Peninsula in the 15th and 16th century, forcing Jews and Muslims to convert to their form of Christianity. This is what the monitors at Facebook consider excessively violent, sensational, shocking, said a statement from Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio. The university said it had posted a series of ads to Facebook to promote an online degree program for theology, catechetics, and evangelization. Facebook's explanation? Your image, video thumbnail, or video can't contain shocking, sensational, or excessively violent content. In less than a week, Facebook was forced to reverse their decision. It came about the same time a disgruntled Facebook user walked into their facility in San Francisco and opened fire. Why? Because they either censored or limited her Facebook posts, essentially putting her out of business. Her business? Exercise, videos, and diet. Apparently with commentary, or perhaps sexuality they either disagreed with or thought you would. Welcome to the 21st century. We have a new scandal in Washington. I don't know if you're aware of it or not. That term is what you're supposed to see, and that's what's supposed to imprint upon your brain. That headline. The reality is not quite that rugged. The article says, quote, yesterday, the release of Richard's memoir, Make Trouble, revealed that an off-the-record meeting apparently transpired between Richard's husband, and the Kushners. As you know, that is President Trump's daughter and son-in-law. According to Richards, Kushner argued that a GOP-controlled federal government left Planned Parenthood with very few avenues of political leverage. I should have told you that Richards was the lady that's in charge of Planned Parenthood. She's on the way out. And she says, accordingly, Jared allegedly presented Richards a deal of sorts. She writes, quote, and this is in her new book, if Planned Parenthood wanted to keep our federal funding, we would have to stop providing abortions. The bargain would involve a potential reward for Planned Parenthood in the form of a possible bump in taxpayer funding that Jared himself allegedly would propose to House Speaker Paul Ryan. This is what passes for scandal. Except that our own President Trump has made the same offer publicly. Richard shares how that she regarded the offer as a bribe and felt it was a public sham that Ivanka and Jared organized to showcase their bargaining skills. Richards proudly turned down the proposal, revealing to readers that she felt deeply afraid for the future of women in America. I think she's more deeply afraid for her own future as a liberal icon and/or leader. Have you ever had your fingerprints done? A handful of companies have been rewarded financially for taking the next step in biometrics, the development of expanded fingerprinting processes. Officials with the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity, long title, which is in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, has announced the winners of something called the nail-to-nail fingerprint. End-to-end is the short version. It's a challenge. So the ability to get a fingerprint of more than just 80% of the finger is a huge step forward in terms of accuracy, something vital in achieving accuracy. It's applicable to law enforcement, but it's also a biometric ID, like in high-tech devices, identifying people for all sorts of reasons. Apparently, fingerprinting has been around, or when we had clay tablets, fingerprints were used for identification even then. You put your finger in the clay. Now, we've come a long way, baby. And the applications of this technology are currently unimaginable. You do know your baby gets a fingerprint before it leaves the hospital, right? The Idaho 4-H leaders interviewed for this particular story asked that their last names and town go unnamed. But they're talking about 4-H clubs, the wholesome 4-H clubs of farms and classic Americana. And according to these folks and to many others, all these activities may soon come to a halt. And it's all about LGBTQ guidance. What sort of guidance? Well, the document is intended to guide everyone involved in 4-H, including kids as young as 5, beginning with definitions of terms such as polysexual and intersex. One section concerns identification documents, names, and pronouns, and says 4-H, including all unpaid and volunteer personnel, as well as youth members, will use pronouns and names consistent with a transgender or intersex individual's gender identity. All a child has to do is identify as a particular gender, and should you insist on something else, you are the problem. So said a U.S. government document, a document that apparently has been deleted from the website. WorldNet Daily contacted a top USDA spokesman who they say was somewhat embarrassed and who asked to go unnamed for this report. He said, quote, 4-H is controlled at the local level, and NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, would not dictate policy on the national level. This document should not have been disseminated to make it appear that it was a national policy. Didn't say it didn't exist. I think all of this is still back to the same thing. We got a new sheriff in town. His name is Donald Trump. The document was no doubt prepared under the Obama administration, disseminated perhaps in a limited way, but it got to Idaho. The policy was there to affirm whatever gender the child asserted. No medical diagnosis, no biological proof. A little boy says he's a girl or vice versa, and voila, that's what you have to call him. That's what you have to treat him. That's where he goes to the bathroom. That's where he camps out, whatever it might be. And you have to use the pronoun of his choice. I think the obvious lesson here is that elections have consequences. We've got a whole lot more to talk about. I want to give you my commentary on the practical perspective of the media and the news in our next segment. Stay tuned.